guides. Um, the forms are fantastic. Cindy, I don't know if you use forms much with your class.
We've used them to do surveys. For the most part, that's what we've done with them.
Yeah. They're really neat, and there's actually a few things that are brand new to forms. They're actually about 2 weeks old now, so I'll call this a demo form. These form settings up here, one of the things that I love about forms is that you can actually restrict it to just people who have accounts within your domain. So if I restrict this to people within my domain, nobody outside of my domain can see it, which means if I want to use something like text from a textbook or an image that my school has purchased digitally for use only with students, I can actually put this form live on the internet without violating any sort of copyright because it's only available to students. Another thing that's really nice is automatically collecting the username, because my students have a lot of trouble typing in the whole domain name without making any typos, and this also keeps them from impersonating each other. You can also do, now this is brand new, only allow one response per person. So that means this is only available if you've automatically collected their username. That's one shot to fill this out, and then that's all you get. And you can shuffle the question order. So I like those options because I like to be able to mix things up a little bit. And the other thing that you're able to do now is the old version of Forms had a handful of themes you could choose from. The new version up here, if you go to change theme, you're now actually going to see what the form will look like to people who are filling it out. And you can change themes over here. And there's a lot more themes to choose from. So I like the city one, but then you've got the option to customize it. And that means you can change fonts. So this title font here it's chosen Roboto Condensed, but I don't like that. I actually want to choose a different font. And anytime you're in any of the Google apps and you have an option to choose a font, down here at the bottom you've got more fonts. If you click on that, that will let you install extra fonts into Google Apps. So this gives you this huge list of fonts, and let's say I want to install, I can actually check off ones that I want to install. So I like Arvo, I like Bitter. Maybe I'm never going to use Lobster, I can uninstall that. So you can go through and you can actually change what fonts appear in your fonts list. So once I've worked with my fonts, I can actually go up here and I can see just the fonts that I want to use. So I can select the font and it will change the way the form looks. I can change the header image. So I can header, insert the image, and this will give me a huge selection of images, but it will also let me pick images from my drive. So I can search in my drive. I can look for things. Now, I was supposed to have one that said header. Maybe that's in shared with me. So basically, I can upload images, or I can choose images, or I can customize from the images that are automatically available. And that gives me my form. So I've got two different ways of working with a form up here. I've got change theme, and I've got edit questions. So change theme is changing the way the form looks. Edit questions is all about changing what the form actually contains. So here I'm going to set up one question in my form, and I can click on Send Form. And there's one more thing that's different about Google Forms, and that's when you click on Send Form, you have the option here. This checkbox will automatically create a short URL.
That's good.
It's really cool. It is a case-sensitive URL, so it gets to be a little bit harder to work with. But you can copy that URL, and it's actually going to take you to the live form itself.
Okay,
So
I have a question. Talking about limiting the where the forms go, and we've noticed now that we have the school district, it is a closed group, um, and so I haven't tried sending a form from my school Google account. We noticed that one of the teachers noticed that she tried to share something with parents, and it wouldn't allow her to because they
yeah,
didn't have the right domain.
that's right. So I really like to do a form for parents, especially at the beginning of the year, when I want them to just sort of introduce themselves. I like to ask them, is there anything you think I should know about your child? Is there anything you think your child should know about me, or anything you want to ask me? So up here at the very top of the form, when you're editing questions, that checkbox here, require open source teacher login to view this form. Open source teacher is my domain, but that'll be your school board domain or your school district domain. If you uncheck that, it's going to warn you, hey, are you sure you want anyone in the world to be able to fill this out? And you click OK. Now that form is open to the internet, so you don't need to have credentials, but it will not automatically collect username. There's no way to set up a public form to automatically collect a username. So you do have to add a question, and then I would put this in as email, have a text question, and you can actually move that up to the top of the form, and that will just collect their email address, but it is vulnerable to typos, which is unfortunate. But when you're talking about adults, usually that's limited in the number of times you'll get a typo, compared to the number of times I've gotten students who have forgotten an R in their domain name. So you can set things up to be public. And then one thing that I really like, and this is under advanced settings, so I've set up, there's an email question, I've chosen text, and then down here I've got advanced settings. And if I click on the little triangle here, that's going to drop down an option, and I can click on data validation. That means it's going to check what they've entered and make sure that it matches a certain criteria. So if I check that, I can choose from number, text, or a regular expression. I use text all the time. And contains, you can say, it has to contain a certain word, but you can actually validate it as an email address. Mm. So if I say text, data validation text is email address, now this form is actually going to require that a person who's filling it out has entered a word at something dot something. Mm-hmm. It won't actually check to make sure that that email address exists, but if I just type in hello and I try and submit that form, it's going to give me an error. Must be a valid email address.
Yeah. Okay.
But if I say hello at hello.hello, it's going to accept that as a valid email address. So it is limited in terms of what you can do. It doesn't know that hello at hello.hello isn't a real email address. It's in fact just nonsense. But there's some text, there's an at symbol, there's some text, there's a dot, and then there's some text. Mm-hmm. So as long as it matches that, it'll work. Now, responses for a form, they actually go into two places. This form itself stores responses, and if you click on responses, the menu, you can see a summary of responses, and that just shows you the answers. So there was one response, hello at hello.hello, and there was no response for untitled question. But it also puts the responses into a spreadsheet. So if I click on responses, by default, my Google Drive is set up to automatically create a new spreadsheet when I create a new form. If you don't have it set up like that the first time you use Google Forms, it's going to say under this menu, click on responses. Instead of view responses, it'll say choose response destination. And it's going to prompt you to create a spreadsheet, and it's going to have a default option already checked to say automatically create a new spreadsheet every time I create a form. I like having it automatically create a spreadsheet because it's pretty easy to go into your form and then click on responses. So then I've got actually a spreadsheet here with all of my responses set in them. So I like Google Spreadsheets, and I'm sure Meredith is going to be shocked to hear that this is really all I'm going to talk about Google Spreadsheets right now as form destinations. If you want to learn more about Google Spreadsheets, I will be more than happy to spend probably way too much time talking about all the cool stuff spreadsheets can do. But there are links in that document of resources for this session about some of the cool stuff you can do with spreadsheets.